Connor. Okay, what we're looking at here is y. Explain why the square root of a equals a over root a. Well, there's two ways of doing this, okay? The first way you could do it is you could explain by cross multiplication that root a by root a is a, and a equals a. Another way you could do it is you could put into powers, and then you could use the subtraction rule, and then you could say a to the half equals a to the 1 minus a half, a to the half equals a to the half. Okay, either way, both of them work. Now, it says a is an element of R. What this means is that a can be any decimal. It can be a decimal, it can be any number, and it has to be bigger than 0. Why can't it be a negative number? Because you can't have the square root of minus 4. Okay, so that's what the language comes from. Okay. Now that you've done that part, which is quite easy, you're on part 2. And what we're going to do for part 2 is, given that y equals this, show that dy dx is 2 times the square root of 1 minus x squared. Now there's two different parts to this, okay? This part here on its own, is a product rule, isn't it? So let's take this blue box off to the side and do it separately, okay, to the full thing. So here's what's going to happen. We're just going to say dy dx, we're going to write down the product rule, plus phi du dx. Now, what we also got to write down next is a list. U equals x, du dx therefore must be, anybody? 1. Phi equals 1 minus x squared to the power of a half. I'll say x squared to the power of a half. What's the dv dx then? A half. The box is protected. And then what?
2x.
Minus a half. And Connor's right. There's an extra part there, isn't there? What's the extra part? You gotta differentiate what's in this box here. And when you differentiate it, what do we get? Now guys, what Simon asked me a good question earlier. He goes, sometimes why is there an extra term here? It's when there's a power to begin with. There's always an extra derivative at the end. Now it's a half by minus 2x, which is going to get me minus x. I'm going to bring the power underneath, so I'm going to get 1 minus x squared. Sorry, what are you asking me? Is there a question? Okay, 1 minus x squared to the power of a half. Now and only now am I ready to do the actual product rule itself. Okay, so I'm just going to reduce this information here. Okay, up here. Now, let's begin. So we're going to get to y dx ends up to be, it's going to be x times the v dx, which is going to be x times minus x all over 1 minus x squared to the power of a half, close bracket, plus phi. Phi is 1 minus x squared to the power of a half, and that's going to be multiplied by du dx. And what's du dx? Du dx is 1. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to give them a common denominator. How do I go about doing that? I'm going to put a 1 plus 1 minus x squared to the power of a half on the bottom. And if I do it to the bottom, I also have to do it to the top. So the extra colour represents me multiplying the top and bottom of that number by the same number. Now what happens next is the following. Minus x squared on top. 1 minus x squared. Oh, why do I keep doing that? 1 minus x squared to the power of half on the bottom. And then we're going to have another 1 minus x squared to the power of half here. And then what's happening next, guys, is what happens when you multiply 1 plus x squared to the power of half, 1 minus x squared to the power of half by 1 minus x squared to the power of half. What do you get?
1 minus x squared.
1 minus x squared, okay? Now just keeping a close eye on what I'm doing here, okay? So, what's going to happen is I'm going to have 1 minus 2x squared all over 1 minus x squared to the power of a half. Now please bear in mind that I only did the product rule. I've only differentiated this part here. That's the only part I differentiated. I now have to differentiate sine inverse x. Okay? Now sine inverse x is going to be 1 over the square root of a squared minus x squared. Is everybody happy with that?
Where did you get that?
The tables.
Tables.
Yeah, when you differentiate it, it turns into 1 minus a squared over x squared.
Where did you get a squared?
Oh yeah, a is always 1, and whatever x is what's in the box. So it's going to be 1 over the square root of 1 squared, which is 1 minus x squared to the power of?
Minus 1 or half.
Power of a half. Now, then, this derivative here, it gets, sorry, I just sort of skipped a step that might have confused us. 1 divided by the square root of 1 squared minus x squared, okay? That in turn changes into the square root of 1 minus x squared to the power of a half, which actually turns out to be the same denominator we had already. Now that the two of them are being put together, what we can do next is we look at this and we go, okay, same denominator, so it's going to be 2 over 2 minus 2x squared 1 minus x squared to the power of a half. Anybody want a question on that? Yep, 1 second. Work away. What's going to happen next is I'm looking at this and I'm going, okay, I'm still looking at the answer here and going, how do I get that? Okay, so what I'm going to do is going to factorize it. 2 into 1 minus x squared. Now 1 minus x squared is 1 minus x squared to the power of 1. And we have 1 minus x squared to the power of a half on the bottom. In effect, this question is 2y divided by y to the power of a half. What's y divided by y to the power of a half? Y to the power of a half. You take away the powers. It's going to be y1 minus a half. And that gives you y to the power of a half. So in effect, this one here and this one here can be cancelled off with each other or divided into each other. So what we're going to get is 2 bracket 1 minus x squared to the power of the top power minus the bottom power. And top power minus the bottom power is a half, and a half in turn is a square root sign. And that's the answer to that question there. Okay? Now lads, this one here is not a product rule because they're not being multiplied by each other. If there was not a plus sign in there, it would be a product rule. So the y dx ends up to become 1 plus the square root of a squared, so 1 squared minus x squared. I got this directly from the tables. Once again, in the tables it says sine inverse x over a is always 1, is 1 over a squared minus x squared. Okay, so a equals 1 and x equals x. Okay, so there's no change. Now that I've done that, I need to differentiate a second time. I'm not going to differentiate this yet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite it. I'm going to rewrite this as 1 over 1 minus x squared to the power of a half. Oh, sorry. 1 divided by 1 minus x squared to the power of a half. And then I'm going to rearrange it using the power rule and I'm going to turn it to a negative power. I still haven't differentiated the second time. Now and only now am I differentiating the second time. When I differentiate 1, it turns into 0. This is a chain rule. Because it's a chain rule, this is safe. It will be in the next step. It's going to be a half, 1 minus x squared to the power of minus a half. Then differentiate what's in the brackets. What happens when you differentiate what's there? Minus 2x. And then look what happens. It's going to be minus x divided by 1 minus x. Sorry, the half cancels with the 2.
No, but you know when you bring it up.
Oh, it's minus a half in the first place. Sorry, lads. excuse me, it was minus a half in the first place, so it means it's minus a half, and that is going to be the power of 3 over 2, excuse me, 3 over 2, and it's still 2x there. So minus 2x by minus a half is going to be x divided by 1 minus x squared to the power of 3 over 2. My apologies. Now that we have that done, what I need to do is, I need to zone in on the information I need. And the information I need is going to be, I need this information here, that's what dy dx is. And the other piece of information I need is going to be, what is d2y dx squared, which is this part here. Okay? So these are my two pieces of information that I need to do the question. Now that I have this done, what's going to happen next is the following. We're just going to group them together. Going to move them across. Okay, and then we're going to put them into the formula here. So, what I have to do here is 1 minus x squared. I'm going to put the power of 1 there because I might need it in a second. Multiply by the second derivative, which is x over 1 minus x squared to the power of 3 over 2. Okay. Minus x times dy dx, and what's dy dx? 1 plus 1. Now, see this here? That's 1 plus 1 over 1 minus x squared to the power of a half. Right? And then finally, the last part is going to be x at the end equals 0. Now, look at this, guys, okay? What we're looking at is the powers. 3 over 2 and 1. What's y to the power of 1 divided by y to the power of 3 over 2? Can anybody tell me? Y to the power of minus a half, and y to the power of minus a half is 1 over y to the power of a half. So basically what's going to happen is the x is not involved, and on the bottom is going to be 1 minus x squared to the power of a half. Alright? That part's done. Now we're going to multiply them by x. Now, what I'm going to do here is, that's going to turn into minus x, and that minus x cancels off with the plus x, doesn't it? Okay, so we don't even need to put it in, we can just cancel them off immediately. Now, this minus 1, this minus x then gets multiplied by this here, so it's going to be minus x over 1 minus x squared to the power of a half, and as you can see, they're both actually the same number. 0 equals 0, and that's proven. Okay? So that's us done there.